finally signs of hope in Jeremiah. We're in day 60 of 66 and 26 in week 9, which means for 8 weeks on Thursdays, we've been in the prophet Jeremiah in the Old Testament. And as you've been tracking through with us, you have probably seen these are some really hard, challenging words that Jeremiah has for the people of Judah because of their unfaithfulness. And last week we even saw that God was bringing about the fulfillment of what he had been warning about, and that is exile. The people of Judah taken away, their cities destroyed, and Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon being successful against Judah. Now, people of Judah have been taken off into Babylon, but now the readings this week offer a glimmer of hope. God has promised to restore them. They will come back to the land of promise, but not yet. In fact, Jeremiah tells the people of Judah who are in exile, build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce, marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. There's going to be a generation or two at least who are going to grow up in Babylon, not in the promised land. So it's going to be a while. In fact, then Jeremiah says, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. God is telling them through Jeremiah that it's going to be a while before his promise of restoration is fulfilled. Now, right in the midst of this reading for today in Jeremiah is a verse that is familiar to many people. It's actually used often as a verse of comfort and hope for us. It's Jeremiah 29:11, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." But this is where I want to be careful also, because sometimes we hold on to a verse like that, and that is our hope, but we expect God to act immediately, and that prosperity and future and hope are going to be manifest immediately, right away. We see it. But this is in the context, historically, at this moment when Jeremiah is telling the people to get comfortable in Babylon, because it's going to be a while before the restoration comes. And so Jeremiah wants the people who are settling in Babylon and building their homes and planting gardens and having children and grandchildren, he wants them to know there is still a future and God will be faithful to his promise, but it's going to take some time. God's timeline is not always our timeline. Sometimes healing does not come in this life. Sometimes we don't see the fruit of our prayers and our faith. Sometimes it comes a generation later. And so we want to have faith. We want to trust that God is always going to be faithful, but we also submit ourselves to God's timeline. And that is the lesson for us today in Jeremiah. There are false prophets in these chapters who are preaching that God is going to act immediately, and within 2 years they will be back. And Jeremiah is saying that's not from God. That's not a message that God is preaching. Sometimes God acts very swiftly. Sometimes it may take years, decades, a lifetime before we see God answering prayers. In all of it, we rest in God's promise. We rest by faith in the fact that God will always be faithful to what he promises. It just might not be the time that we expect.